Right, sorry, as I was saying, what happens is Mussolini and Hitler are going to help General Franco in the Spanish Civil War. So the Spanish are having a civil war, and General Franco is a general who's a dictator, and he is not a very nice guy. He kills his own people again, and Hitler and Mussolini are going to allow it. They actually give him weapons to encourage him to, experiment on his people. So Hitler will actually give him biological weapons to experiment on towns of people to kill them to see, what these chemicals do to people. March 1938, Austria is going to be annexed by Germany. So Hitler is convinced by this point that Britain and France are going to do absolutely nothing against him. So he really doesn't care very much what Britain and France actually think, because he thinks that they're chicken. He's taken the Rhineland, and Britain was like, yeah, it's yours anyway. Go ahead and take it. We're sorry we took it away from you in World War One. He's went ahead and he's made an alliance with Mussolini. He's made alliances with the Japanese. He's allowed General Franco to pretty much, create a genocide against his own people. He's annexed Austria, which means he added Austria to Germany, which was expressly forbidden in the Treaty of Versailles. And Britain and France have done nothing. They've done absolutely nothing against Hitler. And the U.S. is doing nothing either, because we're in a Great Depression and we are a bit self-absorbed at the moment. So then Hitler is going to decide to go ahead and take Czechoslovakia. So at the Munich Peace Conference, Hitler is going to invite Britain, France, Italy, and himself to Munich, Germany. And Hitler doesn't leave Germany. He doesn't leave any area that he actually occupies, because this kind of shows you how paranoid the guy is. Dictators don't leave their places, because if they leave, there could be a coup d'etat where they take over the place. And so he stays in Munich, and he invites Prime Minister Chamberlain and the Dukier from France to come into his country and to have this peace talk, right? They want to have a talk with him. And so Hitler tells Britain and France, look, the Sudeland area of Czechoslovakia, which once belonged to Germany, has German-speaking people on it, and they're being abused. They're being beaten up by the Czech government. And so I need to go in there and save my people. Very convenient. Now, of course, he's lying. And Britain and France have promised Czechoslovakia that they would help them, and that they would not allow Hitler, they would not allow Germany to take them. But in a policy of appeasement, which means you give up your morals for the sake of peace, Britain and France are going to say, we're sorry, Czechoslovakia, at least we're sorry, Sudeland area. Hitler is going to take you, and he's going to take you because we need peace. So at the Munich Peace Conference, Hitler is appeased. He is given the Sudeland area so that Britain and France have time and they have peace. So when Britain and France go home, Hitler doesn't just take the little area, he takes all of Czechoslovakia. So by March 1939, the rest of Czechoslovakia is going to be dismembered by Germany, and he inhabits it by Germans. So he starts putting German people and making them live in the nice homes in Czechoslovakia. He starts deporting any of the Jews in the area and anyone else that he considers undesirable. So what you kind of see is when Prime Minister Chamberlain comes back, he comes back to Parliament and he's like, look, I've got peace right now, right? We need to start building up our military again. And so Britain and France for the next year do build up their military. So peace is in our time. It's just a BS comment made by Chamberlain, when really what you see the British doing is they do start rearming. They do start building up their military again. Because they really understand that Hitler is not going to be a peace. He's not going to just stop with Czechoslovakia. And they find that out September 1939. So the invasion of Poland is the actual spark. This is the spark that's going to start World War II. This is the, oh no you didn't moment. So Hitler is going to demand a portion of Poland to be returned to Germany. And it's a seaport. And the reason why he demands it is because, hey, it did have Germans, or it once belonged to Germany. And so Britain had promised to protect Poland, just as they had promised, to protect Czechoslovakia, them and France. And so this time, Britain is going to declare war. The Soviet Union's in a position to defend Poland too. This is up. Stalin's not really going to be defending them. He's really going to be taking them. So Nazi-Soviet Pact, or the Non-Aggression Pact, is signed between Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. They sign it saying that they're not going to attack each other, but instead they would go in it together and attack Poland. And so the world discovers this pact September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland and World War II starts. And the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin is also going to attack Poland. And September 3rd, Britain and France have to declare a war now on Germany. And Stalin is getting into Poland. The Germans are getting in there, and they're taking whatever they want from the area. They're taking the resources, the places that they consider their own back. So the path to war in Asia, Japan has become increasingly aggressive in China. By 1931, the Mundin incident is going to allow Japan to take Manchuria, so they're going to go ahead and seize Manchuria. The League of Nations condemns it, but they don't do anything, really, because the League is weak. And so Japan is going to finally realize they too can do whatever they want. Kershenk is going to fear that the Soviets are more of a threat than the Japanese, and Kershenk is the guy who leads China. He's a very corrupt guy too, and that's going to lead the Chinese to kind of become communists as time goes on, because he's so corrupt. He would give Mao Zedong feed to go ahead and get the peasants, the local farmers, to go ahead and side with him. So Kershenk is going to fear the Soviets far more than he does the Japanese, and so what you see is Kershenk is going to go ahead and force Mao and the CCP, which is like the Chinese Communist Party. In December 1936, he's going to force a united front. In July 1937, China and Japan are going to clash at the Marco Polo Bridge, and this is going to lead to a war. So in July 1937, Japan officially invades China, and now we've got a war going on. The U.S. is going to condemn this, and the U.S. is going to go ahead and send war supplies to the Chinese army. And the reason why the U.S. is going to do that is to support the open door policy that the United States has with China. Japan is going to capture the capital city, and Kershenk is going to move. He gets out of harm's way. And he's kind of moving because the U.S. is backing him and the U.S. is supporting him. Japan's going to want to create a Monroe Doctrine for Asia. And remember, the Monroe Doctrine said hands off to the Western Hemisphere. It's a U.S. foreign policy, and it was issued in 1823 by President James Monroe. And so what the policy basically said was, any colony that is lost in Latin America is lost forever to the imperial power. So if Spain loses one of their countries that they had taken over here in the New World, it is gone forever. They can never get it back. And if they did, if they tried, if they attempted to recolonize, it'd be considered an act of aggression or an act of war, and the U.S. would have no choice but to fight them. And so Japan wants to do this kind of Monroe Doctrine for Asia. And so what it would mean is any European power that would lose a colony in Asia can never, ever take it back. And if they did, Japan would consider it an act of an aggression and declare war. So Japan wanted to create the Monroe Doctrine for Asia and taking over Siberia. So advance to the south. So the Anti-Comintern Pact is doubtful when the Nazi-Soviet Pact was signed. So what you kind of see going on is Hitler doesn't trust Stalin, and Stalin doesn't trust Hitler, but they're willing to put aside that for the moment because they want to go ahead and, attack Poland together. Japan is going to start looking southward. They start looking to other places that they could maybe, take over and focus on. So thanks to the Nazi-Soviet or the Non-Aggression Pact, Japan is going to react, and they're going to refocus from Siberia to Southeast Asia for oil, rice, and rubber. And they need these things, the oil and the rubber, for their factories, for their war machines. It does risk a war with the United States, but the Japanese feel okay with doing this at the moment because America is just saying neutral, 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 neutral. That's what we keep screaming out. And in 1937, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt is going to issue the quarantine speech. And what the quarantine speech basically says is if countries who don't want war don't actually give supplies, if we do economic sanctions against war aggressive nations like Italy and Japan, then these countries can no longer continue functioning. So America, if we quit selling oil, if we quit selling steel to Japan and Italy, their war machines won't be able to continue operating. So the quarantine speech, quarantine them, isolate the aggressive nations like Italy and Japan, and particularly Italy with Ethiopia and Japan with China. 1940, they're going to cut off all oil and scrap iron unless Japan retreats from China. And this is why Japan is getting really upset with the United States. And that's why they decided to go ahead and launch that surprise attack at Pearl Harbor against the United States. We cut off their oil supply, and that means that their battleships, their airplanes, they're not worth crap because without oil, they can't get up in the air and they can't get across the ocean. And so Japan feels like their hands are being twisted and that they have to attack the United States at Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. So World War II, Europe at war. So at first, the war is kind of like this phony war, and what it means is it's almost like there's not really a war going on in winter 1939 to 1940. Nothing's really happening. You're at war. Britain and France have declared war against Germany, but no real action's going on, and it's because it's winter. You know, that would be the big clue there, because you're talking about people being out in the elements. Basically, the reason why is Hitler is moving his armies into position. He's moving his panzer tanks with 300 panzer tanks with men and supplies in the position. So April to May 1940, the Blitzkrieg, which is lightning fast warfare, lightning fast, and it is meant to gain as much land as possible, is going to be launched against Denmark, Norway, Netherlands, Belgium, and France. Belgium is a neutral country, and so what he's taking is he's taking the Scandinavian countries, and then he takes France. And remember, Hitler particularly hates the French because of the Treaty of Versailles, and because the French really kind of humiliated the Germans at the signing of the armistice, where they made them go ahead and sign in a train car, and Hitler is going to make France sign in that very same train car the actual surrender of France. So he has a long memory. By June 1922, June 22nd, 1940, Germany is occupying 3/5 of France. And so what you're basically seeing is France is falling very quickly to the Nazi or to the German army. And Vichy France is going to be under Marshal Pétain, and he's going to control the rest of France. So Vichy France is basically Nazi-occupied, Nazi-controlled France. And so France is surrendered, and Germany is in control of France now. And they are in the position to launch an invasion of Britain because France is right across that English Channel from Britain. And so August 1940, the Battle of Britain is going to be an air battle, and it starts with the German Air Force bombing constantly London. And the only problem here is that the British are so nationalistic themselves that they will be able to beat the British. I mean, they'll be able to beat the Germans at the Battle of Britain. So why Hitler doesn't actually launch an amphibious attack? He could have launched a water attack, but he thinks that his Air Force is going to be able to go ahead and beat London into the ground. But he doesn't do that. He instead tries to gain control of the air. So he might have been able to launch a water attack across the English Channel, but he doesn't do it. Instead, he chooses to do the air. And the British are, you know, they're up there on top of buildings with telescopes, with their with their binoculars, and they're doing air sirens throughout the city. I mean, you just can't beat these people. And when bombs are landing in the city, they go and pick them up and move them away from historical areas.